Welcome back to the Big Sunday Show. The drama over House committee positions is building ahead of an unexpected vote for one high-profile Democrat tomorrow night. Congressman Schiff and Swalwell just cannot get over getting kicked off the Intel Committee, and Omar is trying to save her spot on Foreign Affairs. Today, all three defended the actions that got them booted in the first place, like Schiff, who is still pushing the Russian collusion hoax.
What we found in our investigation is that Donald Trump's campaign manager was sharing internal campaign polling data and the strategy for key battleground states with an agent of Russian intelligence.
Swalwell maintaining he did nothing wrong, even though he had some sort of relationship with a Chinese spy.
Don't take my word for it. Take the FBI's word for it. They never talk about ongoing investigations. 3 different times they came out and said 2 things. All I did was help them, and also I was never under any suspicion of wrongdoing.
The same FBI, who McCarthy said told him some very troubling information about Swalwell in leadership briefings. And then there's Congresswoman Omar, who many Republicans don't want on the Foreign Relations Committee because of past anti-Semitic comments. So what is she doing now? Calling Republicans racist.
Many of these members don't believe a Muslim, a refugee, an African should even be in Congress, let alone have the opportunity to serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Before. These people are okay with Islamophobia.
Well, there you go, all lined up. Jason, I want to go straight to you on this. Your thoughts?
Look, these three trying to assign motivation to Kevin McCarthy or the rest of Republicans is wrong, and it's off base, and I think they're ill-informed, to say the best. The Select Committee for Intelligence, which involves Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell, is totally different than other committee assignments. These people have lied routinely, having looked at classified information, then gone out to the world saying, I got to see classified information. Now I'm going to tell you what I saw, even though you're not supposed to do that. And then it ends up that those were lies. So Kevin McCarthy, as the Speaker of the House, can dismiss and not allow them to have it. I think they should be totally 100% stripped of their security clearances. Even as a rank and file member, you do get a security clearance. They shouldn't even have that, let alone be looking at the nation's most important intelligence. I take a little different track on Ilhan Omar. I think the Congresswoman, that decision is up to the Democrats. I don't think it should be up to the Republicans. When Republicans didn't like that they took Paul Gosar of Arizona and Marjorie Taylor Greene off of their committees, they said, hey, wait a second, we get to make that decision. And I think that same principle is true. And I think Kevin McCarthy is having a hard time getting the votes. They have to vote on that to populate the committees. I think he's actually going to probably lose that. I think there are enough Republicans who'll say, enough of this. Democrats get to pick the Democrats, Republicans get to pick the Republicans for the rank and file, for the for the normal committees. And that's how I actually would vote. I know I'm in the minority, but I think that they get to, Jeffries and company get to make that decision. Republicans shouldn't just handpick who gets to be on a regular committee, right. not a select committee, but a regular committee.
Right. Intelligence viewed as a little bit different. Katie, I want to take it to you on this, because when we just listened particularly to the sound from Adam Schiff, and I, for a moment, thought it was flashback sound. I was like, when is this from? Oh, my goodness, that recently as today. Just your thoughts on, to Jason's point, he had disappointed a lot of people who felt like he had the shoe that was going to drop. And so even some Democrats may not believe that he belongs on that committee.
Well, first of all, it's so interesting to watch them act like this is a Republican problem, that the Republicans are just doing this out of thin air. They can thank Nancy Pelosi for this. They started this war, and the Republicans now are playing by their rules, and they don't like being held to their own standards when it comes to these committees. I disagree with Jason a little bit when it comes to the committee assignments that are being taken away. As Kevin McCarthy has said, Speaker McCarthy, he's not saying they can't serve on any committee. It's very specific committees, the Intelligence Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee, which have to do with national security. Adam Schiff, of course, abused his position as the chairman of the Intelligence Committee by lying about intelligence he had for political purposes. We know the whole thing with Eric Swalwell and the honeypot situation. And for Ilhan Omar, for me, as horrific as her anti-Semitic comments have been repeatedly, that's not why I think she's being taken off of the Foreign Affairs Committee. I think it's because she's expressed, she's she's made fun of Americans for being afraid of Al-Qaeda and Hezbollah. She said that some people did something on 9/11. So when it comes to her comments about terrorist organizations which have killed hundreds, thousands of Americans, that seems like it is a bit of an issue when it comes to the Intelligence Committee. So it's not about what they've said. It's about the implications they may have for national security. And the fact that Adam Schiff, the day that he was kicked off of the committee, or the day that he was announced to be kicked off, he gets on TikTok.
I was just going to take things. That was the next place we were going to go.
If you
with
need
that.
another example why he shouldn't be on the committee, there's another one.
Tom, your thoughts?
Well, maybe he wants, he's going to have a future career. He's going to have to maybe do some TikTok. Maybe he'll do some dance videos after he's
in the Senate. He's running for Senate now.
Yeah, if he loses for the Senate race. I think Ilhan Omar, I think McCarthy should say, no. She says, some people don't want an African or a Muslim on these committees. He should say, no, just you. You're the only one. We don't want you on the committee. But Schiff, obviously, he disqualified himself because, he lied repeatedly for years. Same thing, Swalwell, we know the Fang Fang situation. So I would just as soon let them keep their positions on these things, because then I'd be constantly interrogating them. I would constantly be turning it back. I think they ought to have Schiff into intelligence, if only as a witness, sit down and find out and get to the bottom. Because the reason he was so confident about lying, he knew there were people in our intelligence services and in the FBI that had his back. That's why he was saying all that stuff, because we know there was a lot of this stuff going on. And in fact, if you saw the Twitter files this week, the Russia collusion thing with Trump was not just the only thing that was made up. Virtually all the Russia stuff was made up, and Twitter has the emails to prove it. Twitter knew that they were flagging these organizations, and media groups were talking about all this Russian misinformation that was on Twitter. It wasn't even there. It's all made up.
Yeah, and speaking of social media and TikTok, we teased it. Here is Adam Schiff on TikTok.
Hello, I'm Congressman Adam Schiff with some troubling news. Today, Kevin McCarthy removed me from the House Intelligence Committee, all for doing my job, for holding Trump accountable and standing up to the extreme MAGA Republicans.
Jason, to you?
I don't know. It's hard for me not to vomit watching that. I'm sorry. That guy is he's so full of himself, and he uses the Russian. Come on.
Get a shot.
Congress even
get a shot of me.
They banned TikTok. What does he do? He goes on TikTok.
The Chinese spy app that they're trying to currently ban, possibly. Oh, there you go, Tom. Look, I know we laugh about it, but the truth is that Adam Schiff was in charge of the House Intelligence Committee, the chairman. He was supposed to be trusted, regardless of his political party, with intelligence for the sake of national security. He abused his position, abused that intelligence to launch a special counsel investigation for political reasons. That's not why the American people have an intelligence chairman, no matter which political aisle.
To impeach the president? Look, he was part of the Gang of Eight. He got to see the same intelligence that the President of the United States, and he should not ever have a security clearance. Wouldn't get one in the private sector, shouldn't have one in Congress.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.